The cinematic world, along with millions of global admirers, has been deeply affected by the recent loss of Diane Keaton. Her passing at the age of 79 marks the close of a brilliant era in Hollywood, particularly for a performer celebrated for transforming vulnerability into artistic depth and solitude into sophisticated beauty. Keaton's death represents a profound loss to the arts, prompting a widespread, silent period of mourning across the industry and among her dedicated audience. Fans, co-stars, and filmmakers flooded social media with messages of heartbreak, disbelief, and gratitude. But among the most touching reactions was one that came days later, a quiet, deeply emotional tribute from Warren Beatty, her longtime friend, co-star, and rumored love from decades past. For Warren, losing Diane wasn't just saying goodbye to a collaborator. It was saying goodbye to a woman who had shaped his life, both on screen and off. "Goodbye, Diane," he wrote simply, 2 words that carried decades of unspoken emotion. Diane and Warren first met in the 1970s, at the height of New Hollywood's golden age, a time when creativity ruled and boundaries blurred. Warren was already a legend, the charming leading man who had conquered both film and fame. Diane, meanwhile, was a rising star, quirky, magnetic, and completely unlike anyone else. When they met, there was an instant spark. They never officially confirmed a romance, but their friendship ran deep, defined by mutual respect and creative chemistry. Warren once described her as a woman who could outsmart anyone in the room without ever trying. Diane, in her usual playful tone, called him a tornado of brilliance, both irresistible and exhausting. Their connection, much like their films, was complex, layered, and unforgettable. When Diane and Warren joined forces for Reds in 1981, they created one of cinema's most ambitious and emotionally charged films. The political epic, directed by Beatty, earned 12 Oscar nominations, including Best Actress for Keaton. Behind the scenes, the film brought them even closer. They challenged one another, argued, laughed, and sometimes drove each other to exhaustion. Yet the result was magic, a masterpiece of passion and conviction. Warren later admitted that working with Diane changed the way he viewed storytelling. "She didn't just act," he said. "She lived every word." Diane called Reds the hardest and most beautiful thing she'd ever done. It was during that time that their artistic bond deepened into something that resembled love, not the fleeting kind, but one rooted in admiration and shared vision. In the years that followed, their lives took different paths. Warren married actress Annette Bening in 1992 and built a family, while Diane adopted 2 children, Dexter and Duke, choosing motherhood over marriage. Yet, despite time and distance, their friendship endured. They would exchange letters, phone calls, and occasional lunches, always picking up as though no time had passed. Warren admired Diane's courage in staying true to herself, especially in an industry that often pressured women to conform. "She made eccentricity elegant," he once said. "She made being different desirable." Diane, for her part, spoke fondly of Warren in interviews, calling him one of the few people who truly understood the chaos of genius. Their connection remained private, unspoken, but unbreakable. When Warren Beatty received the call that Diane had passed, friends say he went completely silent. It was as though time had stopped. The two had shared nearly 5 decades of memories, laughter, arguments, creative triumphs, and quiet moments of reflection. Though they hadn't worked together in years, they'd remained close through occasional calls, checking in on one another. A source close to Beatty told Vanity Fair that Warren adored Diane, always did, always will. After hours of silence, he finally released a brief public statement that simply read, "Goodbye, Diane. Thank you for everything you gave the world, and to me." It wasn't elaborate, but those who knew him understood its depth. Warren Beatty, the man of charisma and words, had been left speechless by grief. A week later, on October 18, 2025, Warren Beatty attended Diane's private funeral service at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Los Angeles. He arrived quietly, dressed in a black suit, carrying a single white rose. Those in attendance noted how visibly emotional he appeared throughout the ceremony. During the eulogies, he sat beside Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin, both of whom comforted him as tears welled in his eyes. At one point, during a slideshow of Diane's greatest performances, Warren reportedly whispered to a friend, "She never pretended. That's what made her so rare." When it was his turn to speak, the entire room fell silent. Beatty took the podium, paused, and said softly, "I was lucky enough to know her. Lucky enough to love her in my own way." The audience wept. In his speech, Warren spoke not of her fame or success, but of her humanity. "Diane," he said, "wasn't interested in being adored. She was interested in being real." He described how she would laugh at her own mistakes, how she would wear mismatched hats to meetings just to make people smile, and how her presence could light up even the dullest day on set. He called her a living poem, unpredictable, brilliant, and endlessly kind. As he spoke, the air in the chapel grew thick with emotion. It wasn't the farewell of two movie stars. It was the goodbye of two souls who had grown together, apart, and together again across the years. When he finished, he placed his rose on her casket and whispered something no one could hear. Warren Beatty and Diane Keaton were among the last great symbols of Hollywood's golden age, a time when art and authenticity mattered more than image. Together, they represented the best of that generation, bold, daring, and endlessly creative. Their films, from Reds to Looking for Mr. Goodbar and beyond, captured the changing spirit of America in the 1970s and 80s. Both actors challenged the industry to evolve, each in their own way. Diane fought against stereotypes of women in film, while Warren used his platform to direct and produce stories that reflected human complexity. Their bond became a quiet legend, two forces of nature who could clash and connect in equal measure, but who always respected the fire in one another. At the funeral, Goldie Hawn's tribute had already brought the room to tears. When she stepped down from the podium, she embraced Warren tightly, both of them silently grieving the woman who had shaped so much of their lives. Afterward, Goldie told reporters that Diane's heart was so big, it made you feel like you could fit your whole world inside it. Warren echoed that sentiment later, saying, "You don't meet people like Diane twice in a lifetime. You're lucky if you meet one." Their shared sorrow became a symbol of how Diane had woven herself into the very fabric of those who knew her, not just as a colleague, but as a guiding light. Even in death, her warmth lingered. Though her passing was heartbreaking, Warren reminded everyone during his eulogy that Diane would not have wanted sadness, she would have wanted laughter. She believed that the best way to honor life was to live it loudly, he said. Indeed, Diane Keaton lived with unmatched vitality. From her quirky hats to her unfiltered interviews, she made individuality fashionable. She didn't try to fit in, she redefined what it meant to stand out. Warren spoke about how Diane's courage changed Hollywood, making it more accepting of imperfection, more welcoming of authenticity. "She made it okay to be yourself," he said, smiling through tears. "And that may be the greatest role she ever played." As the funeral came to an end, Warren lingered by the graveside longer than most. Witnesses said he stood in silence for several minutes, his hand resting on the casket as if reluctant to let go. "Goodbye, Diane," he whispered again, this time not to the cameras or the public, but to the woman herself. Later that evening, back at his home, he reportedly watched Reds alone, pouring a glass of wine in her honor. Friends close to him said he has been quietly reflecting on their time together ever since. "She was one of the few people who could make him laugh at himself," a family friend said. "He'll miss that the most." It was a goodbye, not of endings, but of eternal gratitude. Today, Diane Keaton's spirit continues to live on, not just through her films, but through the countless artists she inspired. Warren Beatty's tribute stands as a reminder that true connection never fades, even in death. Their lives, intertwined through art and affection, represent the enduring power of creativity, friendship, and love. For Warren, saying goodbye to Diane wasn't the closing of a chapter, it was honoring a bond that will never die. "Some people," he once said, "leave the screen, but never leave your heart." And that is exactly who Diane Keaton was, a light that still flickers across time, through laughter, through memories, and through every heart she touched. Goodbye, Diane, and thank you for the beauty you left behind.